Siouxsie Q, and you're listening to the Performers Pod, a space for performers to talk about our industry a real way we usually aren't given in the press. Today we're chatting with queer porn femme legend Siouxsie Q. She's basically my porn big sister, and I'm just so glad that I got to talk to her today. If you want to support the pod, you can become a monthly member of my Patreon. It's patreon.com/ChelseaPo. Today we talked to Siouxsie about the early wave of queer porn in the Bay Area, her being my porn big sister in so many ways, her activism, her BDSM work, being a femme, and honestly just so much more. I really hope you enjoy this really femme conversation about porn. Siouxsie, you are like honestly one of my favorite people in porn. I totally view you as like a big sister in porn because you're like the generation right before mine in like the East Bay queer scene. Yep. And I feel like you were really able to show how much femmes can do in porn, and especially like starting queer porn, that you have like stuff like you shot for Crash Pad with Poppy Cox. That's like a total age play scene, or the thing with Coral Aorta for Trouble Films, and then you'll like do a total like real BDSM scene and like be on the verge of crying from like crazy pain stuff, and then you'll do like mainstream porn, and I think that's so awesome. And even like when I called you today, you're like, oh, I can give you all this advice on like podcasting and stuff. So welcome. I love you. You're amazing.
I love you, and you are amazing. I'm so glad that you exist and that you are, you know, we're both still out here. You know, the dropout rate is high in our, you know, I love that you use like the generational thing. I think that I was like a junior, like an upperclassman in like East Bay queer porn when you came onto the scene, like your freshman year, even though we were like all obviously like in our 20s.
But that's 100% how it was. I was like, okay, there was like the real older people like Jizz and Courtney and Shine who made like the first stuff, and then I felt like it was you and a few other people who were like still working at like the Lusty Lady, right? You worked there,
right? Yeah, I was still working at the late great unionized worker-owned peep show in San Francisco, the Lusty Lady. When I started my adult film career, I was like, oh, because there were certain dancers. That's where I met Arabelle and like. Some dance, of course, Cinnamon, who I was dating at the time, like he had shot for Crash Pad. That's actually like before Cinnamon and I were ever like friends or a thing, or he hired me as a Lusty Lady. I was definitely like lurking the Crash Pad website as a civilian, being like, look at these hot queers having such a good time.
That's 100% the same route for me. I was like, I hella watched Crash Pad series scenes before I was even on it. I was like, these are amazing. I'm like, I see people that look like me having sex like I'm having. So
totally.
Are you from the Bay Area originally?
Kind of. I grew up on the Central Coast, like 2 hours south of the Bay, and my aunt always lived in North Beach, just a couple blocks from the Lusty Lady. So as a little kid, and my grandmother had a lot of health problems at the time. My aunt always worked in the UC San Francisco medical system. So I would go, if she had like a month of doctor's appointments, I would just go with her as a child. And so I grew up in that city, specifically in North Beach, where I would years later begin my career as Siouxsie Q. So San Francisco always feels like my hometown, because I was, you know, the first city that I went to as like a teenager at 18, when I finally got access to the car. I drove to Haight-Ashbury and got my nose pierced, you know.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Yeah, so I've always kind of viewed you as a regional like Bay Area local ever since I kind of moved here, and I definitely get that vibe. I definitely feel like you're like the hometown porn star here.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
definitely how I feel.
It feels that way.
Yeah.
I went back recently, just very briefly, like my first visit, like real visit since COVID. And Oh man, yeah, that city's just in my blood. I love it so much.
It feels so different now. It just feels so empty, to be
Yes.
honest. Yeah, I live in the city now, and it's just so
You
drastically different.
do?
Yeah,
Wow. When did you make that
basically,
move?
2 months before the pandemic started, I moved in with my
Okay.
partner, and then
Ooh.
this last year, I think we moved in February. Basically, every techie moved out of the city, so we were able to move into like a luxury apartment for less than what we were paying.
Oh
So it's
yes.
very strange that
So
the city
weird.
feels like 35% capacity, to be honest. It's very different.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know, like I feel like the city really needed that because
Hmm.
we could, you know, when I left, I you know, was essentially priced out of even the East Bay. Like I had been evicted for that Airbnb, those Airbnb sweeps of the 2010. I was like, what?
Definitely.
I can't just rent out a room in my house to like whoever wants to come over from Europe? What? Landlord, you're mad? Why would you be mad? But she was, so I got evicted and moved over to the East Bay, and like, you know, there was hardly anybody left in San Francisco from like our community who was,
Yeah,
you know, I remember my partner at the time, Sam Solo of girlbullies.com, like
such a
you
good
girl bully,
website.
team girl bullies.
Also,
we
like
all
the Taylor Swift thing you have of the Girl Bullies trailer is so like one of my favorite things ever, and I bring up every time I hear what's the Taylor Swift song it is?
blank space, blank
Blank Space.
space.
I still like bring that up whenever I hear it to anyone. I'll be like, so there's this
Listen,
like porn thing about it, and Siouxsie Q did it to the music.
I don't know. Okay, so we made like a little, you know, femdom, lighthearted girl bully themed music video to the song Blank Space because Taylor Swift is a girl bully, like femdom icon, if anyone's paying attention. If you're paying attention, you know this. And that thing was up on the website. It's down now. It's like, you know, girl bullies is growing up like all of us, but it was up for like 5 years. And like no one said a thing.
I
You
know,
like
right?
Taylor Swift's people are not slacking. Like they're not out here just being like, oh, someone's using Taylor Swift's image. Like that's probably fine. That's not them. So I feel like they saw it and were just like, we don't need to fight with these people. They're on our team.
I have like a very deep conspiracy that Taylor Swift's gay, but that's like its own different thing.
Okay, there's a corner of TikTok that agrees with you and agrees with me, and we're not alone. And she is, and it's fine.
My
So
girlfriend hears
don't
so much about it, and she's like, she's not. I'm like, no, she is. I have photos that prove
Sam is
it.
the same way.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll send him like TikTok evidence. He's just like, you, this is not. You're with me though, Chelsea. I'm
Yeah,
glad somebody.
100%. I feel like we're 100% on the same page for so much.
The new
So
album specifically, God, so gay.
see, I feel like a little bit trash because I'm like, I just want her as like a pop star from 4 years ago that was objectively bad. But
Right?
I just want that, and I feel bad about it. But
Bad. You're
so
good.
what was going on in like queer porn when you first got into it? Like,
Man, what a time.
because I
So
feel
I
like
remember. Go
you're
ahead.
like gonna be the first person I think on this podcast who like predates like maybe like 2000 like 14 and queer porn in the Bay. So I'm really interested just to
Oh,
hear what was going
cool.
on.
For sure. I mean, okay, I remember going to, I think it was Pride weekend, the Lexington, which was one of the last lesbian bars in the city. Oh, P.S.
Truly
Really quick
iconic.
side note. Truly iconic. It is not the last lesbians bar in the city, though, which I had to remind some white cis gay boys that I was standing in line behind at the Powerhouse last weekend for Dory Alley, which was like, oh my God, this is still real life. Like this is a thing that we can still do. And they were having this conversation that I couldn't help but overhear. They were like, yeah, there's no more lesbian bars in the city anymore. It's so sad. Lesbians are like dinosaurs. They once roamed the earth. And like it was, and I was like, excuse me. Wild Side West is open, has been open, will be open forever. It's in Bernal Heights. It's cowboy themed. He's like, is there line dancing? I'm like, no. It would be great, but the dykes there would hate that.
That would be really cool. I can totally see that.
But anyway, so I digress.
Mhm.
But I remember being at the Lexington with Cinnamon and maybe Arabelle and the artist formerly known as Jordan Cherry or Noxious, and I'm not sure what they go by these days. And we were dancing and being just like wild. I was wearing some like ridiculous outfit, like learning. And I had always been a queer femme that like barely dressed for the male gaze, like was just very out there. I was very of that. Like, I had a whole era where I wore bugs, like plastic bugs as earrings. The
So
girl.
that's so cool. Yeah, definitely I do.
Yes. So I was very like of that, but figuring out that sort of vibe was marketable in the adult industry, that I could be like a queer porn star, like those words had not been together in my mind before I like sort of became one and met my community. And I remember just like feeling that energy at Pride at this like lesbian bar. We were all dancing and like visibly, because like when I went to college in Oregon, me and my girlfriend, it was a very like, Eugene is a very queer friendly city and everything, but we were among like only visibly like queer out couples. Like we were the only like queer couple that I saw doing PDA, specifically like femme people. It was different, right? It was different.
Definitely, yeah.
So getting to be just so myself, so unabashedly like sexual, it's just like, no,
definitely,
we fuck for money, and like the world knows that because it's on the internet forever. Sorry. we gay fuck for money. Like once you're gay on the internet, no takesy backsies, sorry.
For real, yeah.
And that's true of porn just in general. So that it was a wild feeling. It felt like we were at the beginning of something exciting, even though like queers have been making porn ever since people could make things on so it was nothing like new, but it felt new to me. And it felt like we were on the verge of something like important and like true and magical, and it felt like the Babysitters Club also. I felt like young and naive and like, what could stop us? We're young femmes who know how to make our money.
It's so cool.
Lots of blind optimism, but I love that. It was a great
time.
So
it was like very DIY when you like came into it. Still, it was still like a lot of optimism and being like, we're doing something special here that's done before, but maybe it hasn't gotten like porn's attention as much.
Right, but there was also this piece of yearning that like, Courtney had and Shine had these websites, but how they had them was a little bit of a mystery, right? Like there was a lot of, how to get a payment processor. There was no Model Centro. There was no ManyVids. There was no OnlyFans. So I remember having these like deep conversations with Sam at the time, and like, okay, like clips for sale. Okay, clips for sale takes 60%. That seems really steep. And then all the camming sites, and trying to figure out how we could harness that independence that we had as queer performers and turn that into dollars that were more than just a couple $100s that we would make on a set, which at the time, like, oh my God, I made several $100s today for having queer sex. That felt like I could never be hungry again. You know what I mean?
It definitely did. Also,
even though we were completely dependent on other people hiring us, but it still felt like unstoppable.
$300 went way further in San Francisco back then than it does now, I feel like.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
indeed. So there was that yearning of like, okay, but how can we take this to the next level? And so when you started doing like East Bay queer porn and starting to produce, I remember that was very exciting. You were one of the first, and you inspired me to be like, yeah, man, just do it. What do they say in Newsies? Even if we ain't got hats and badges, we're a union just by saying so. It's just like, yeah, we're stars, we're producers. If you do it, it's real.
Yeah, I came from like a whole DIY like punk thing in the Midwest. So when I came here, I was like, oh, like someone has a camera, let's just like make something. I don't care if it like sells. I'm just like, I want to do porn. Like that's why I'm here. Yeah.
I feel like that like mixtape energy of queer porn really like still carries over today. It's like as much as I love making movies and like where I'm at in my life right now in terms of producing, like I'm getting lots of opportunities to make stuff for like Pure Taboo and like Adult Time and these movie
That's so
houses.
cool.
And even over pandemic, like, you know, we were self-shooting stuff for Brazzers, and they have, you know, that's very, even though it was DIY, like we were doing it ourselves, very specific specs, very specific aesthetics of like what we're trying to achieve here. And then with the Pure Taboo stuff, it's much more like a cinematic, like Law and Order episode or something.
Yeah, I'm like, we've been on those kinds of sets together before. We know that experience.
Yes. And
Yeah.
that's fun, but like this, my energy, like when I'm just like sitting down and figuring out what I want to make, it's like very Riot Girl, it's very mixtape. It reminds me of when I was like, had a crush on a girl and was like, okay, how do I tell her with these like 10 bands that we both mutually love? That's the porn that I make, you know, and that's like what I want my fans to feel.
That's just so wholesome and great. I love that so much. So what were you doing when you got into porn? So you were like working at the Lusty Lady. Did it just feel like the natural kind of evolution, or were you also, I know you were like very involved in musical theater and you brought that in obviously like afterwards, like where did you think you were going to go at that point?
Oh man. Well, okay. When I first moved to San Francisco and I wasn't even dancing at the Lusty Lady yet, I was working at Papyrus, a stationery store.
Wow.
I actually have a weird background in stationery. I don't know. It was
Really,
retail.
you do? I would have never
like
guessed in a million years.
So weird. But I had to take, and I was living out in Excelsior, like way deep Mission. So I would take the 14, I think, those buses that went all the way up and down Mission Street and then like up to North Beach. And I was going through this really rough breakup, and I was reading Roots at the time, like just massive, just like Kunta Kinte and I just fucking feeling it. But I would drive by the Armory like every day and every night, and it just felt like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Like nobody ever goes in, nobody ever comes out, but we know what goes on. And I was watching porn, and like I saw that like there was a connection. Like some people who performed with Crash Pad and also worked at the Lusty Lady ended up, you know, on kink.com sets. Like how could I make like that journey too? So I had and specifically because like I'm like you, I'm a weird curve, like like you know, you're not gonna do that. Like, trust me, I had my fair share of experiences of like going home with like some cute butch from a pride party and being like, okay, so this is what I want to do in bed, and then being like, whoa, ma'am, fucking choke me, and they're like, I know.
I've been there. Yes.
You've been there. So I thought to solve that issue, I was like, maybe I should be a bondage model. Maybe I should seek out these experiences that I'm seeing on the internet and have them hopefully safely on a set with other people involved, and not just like in some cute queer's room in Hayward, you know? So yeah, I just started and you know, I come from a background in musical theater and theater in general. So the idea of like schmoozing and like auditioning and like meeting the right person and getting cast, like it's very second nature to me. So I just kind of like went into that, you know, deal. The Upper Floor was happening at the time, which was like the intersection of the kink community in San Francisco and like the professional, you know, kink production houses. So I started hanging around in that world. Of course, I was deeply involved in like the leather community, and there was a lot of crossover there. So that's what really like fueled my my future. But as soon as I had sex on camera, like even before Crash Pad, this was like up in, you know, college, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I was like, oh yeah, I love this.
What did you shoot at college?
Oh my God. So this is wild to think about at the time, but it's a very nice couple from New Zealand. They were doing some kind of like, you know, half real estate, half adult film hustle, which like mad respect.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah. So I mean, think about it. They had these houses that were staged and ready to be sold. What do you do in a nice staged house?
You shoot a porno.
Make a porno. Exactly. So I started working with them, and they had these sort of like truth or dare themed sites. And then they were like, you know, we have this other site that's like sell your sex tape, where we give you a camera. Okay, this was like what, 2006 or 7. So like, how much did that camera cost?
I
And
mean,
it
back
like
then, real money.
real money, like
Yeah.
several $1,000s. I mean, the cameras were you, and it was like one of those, like it was big. It
Hmm.
was not a, it was not, you know,
Not your small
not one of these.
handheld. Yeah.
Not one of these. No.
Your
And
your
and
giant
even
camcorders from the 90s almost.
not almost though, much closer to like what you
Hmm.
would see on like an ABC set, you know.
Yeah.
But they gave it to us, and it was like, I mean, even this, my little 4K beater that's like been to Burning Man and back, I would really think twice about giving this to 2 college lesbians for the
For
week
sure.
and being like, please film your sex and give it back to me. I'm sure I signed some kind of contract, but like,
Yeah, that's not gonna hold up. You like, I
we
gave this
did.
lesbian a camera to shoot sex, and now the camera's gone. Like, who are you gonna tell that
Like, welcome to being gay. Yeah.
to?
Like, no. So yeah, but they did. This very sweet couple trusted us with their very expensive equipment. We took the camera for 7 days, and the idea was like, shoot for an hour every day, you know, but only like 15 to 20 minutes of that needs to be sex. You know, it's at the end of the day, at the end we'll have like basically an hour of sex, and then like a bunch of footage of like real college lesbians. And like, I loved that shit. Girlfriend didn't love it so much. That's okay. God bless her.
I
She'll be
had that
great.
exact same thing in college where I'm like, let's shoot porn together. My girlfriend's like, I don't know. I only want a cam to make money. And I'm like, but it's awesome. Look at all this awesome porn. And there's like, I don't know.
Oh, you know, it's not for everybody. It's really
Definitely
not.
not.
I think it's like cilantro. It's like just some people, it just tastes like soap. It's just not ever going to be fun for you. And like, we've all sadly worked with those people. Like I've met those people. And just like in the same way that not everybody is non-monogamous or polyamorous, like some
Hmm.
people are just straight up just want their one person. And like, that's chill. I'm not trying to tell grandma that like about who's been with grandpa for 50 years very happily that like, no man, swingers parties will save your marriage. Like, it's not for everybody. It's okay.
I feel like there's so much about that when you're in college and you discover you're like, oh my God, I want to do porn. And most people around you are like, what? How do
Yeah.
you do that? And then you just kind of have to take the jump, I feel like, and move to one of maybe like 3 or 4 cities.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the barrier of entry is so low. It's just like, you know, before the end of the day, you could be a porn star
For real.
if you and that's exciting, I think, but it's also really scary, you know, because of the isolation, because the stigma is so just unforgiving. That if you like have a wild manic night in your college dorm room and decide to launch an OnlyFans, like, you can't take that back
Yeah,
ever.
you really can't. I feel like that's
So
one of like the most important things to realize with porn. It's like eventually everyone's gonna see it or know about it or something. And it's just like,
yeah,
can you stand behind what you're putting out and be okay with it and have people understand what you're doing?
totally.
Yeah, it's
Don't send your girls to college. They'll come out lesbians, porn stars. Like, just don't. But I
it's the
mean, I
truth.
remember it's the truth because I learned about the lusty lady in college. I learned about
Hmm.
Annie Sprinkle in college. Um, I remember coming out to my mom about, you know, this the stuff, this content I had made that was now part of all of our lives forever. And she was so freaked out and hurt at the time and just didn't understand. But the conviction that I had, and I just remember like picturing little Annie Sprinkle's like face in the back of my head, just like, she's not wrong. Like, I know she's not wrong about this, you know, about like that you can, and like, I'm a third generation feminist, you know, like my
Hmm.
grandmother was a cocktail waitress and a mill worker and like a divorcee in 1966. You know, she was
Hmm.
out here, and I watched my mother and my grandmother work really, you know, really be on the front lines of capitalism, just like from office jobs to, like I said, service work, factory work. My grandmother died at 66, and she taught me about feminism more than anybody. She taught me the word chauvinist pig. Shout out to Grace. Her example, Bob Barker from The Price is Right. She's like, look
Oh,
at the way
wow.
he treats those women like objects. Look at the way he refers to them as his. Grandma. Wow. I learned so much
Wow.
from her. But she taught me, and my mom taught me that like I can do like bodily autonomy first and foremost is our feminism, that I can do whatever I want with my body. And that includes all the things I've done for kink.com and Insex and Queer Porn TV.
Yeah.
And, you know, that how could that not include this? And I knew my mom knew that too. She was just having feelings. But logically, here we are.
Yeah. I feel like it's very hard for parents to get that at first when you're like, I want to start doing porn. It feels like a very big thing, especially because I feel like most people don't have that much information about the industry. Like my mom's reaction was immediately like, oh, you're gonna start doing meth, all these like really crazy things. But I feel like at the time I was also super driven where I'm like, oh no, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm like, I can reference these 3 people that I'm like, okay, I know what Sasha Gray's doing. I can send you the Vice article that she's like explaining feminism and shit. Like I felt very driven.
Yeah, you gotta cite your sources.
Yeah, for sure. So who like really influenced you? Obviously you brought up Annie Sprinkle, but was it just kind of what was around you? It just kind of organically happened?
Yeah. Annie Sprinkle, Carol Queen, huge influence. She wrote Real Lives
Amazing.
of a Girl. I actually in college, I used that book as like a reference for this performance art thing that I created. And also her book, The Femme and the Leather Daddy. She was very influential to me, both like porn and sex work wise, but also as like a queer femme and a leather person. Like, you know, there was not really a women's leather scene in like the way that there is now when she was out trying to get her dick wet. You know, she was dressing up as, you know, a passing, you know, NB twink boy and going to these gay fisting parties. Like that's how she was making it work. And so
Everyone needs to know who Carol Queen is. Like they're like one of the coolest people that they know who I am. And like we've had conversations and been on panels together. It's still just like how like she's really, I feel like the OG of like SF porn, sexuality.
But then also my peers, like I was often the only white dancer on stage in like the late shifts, and that's where I learned the most about the industry, honestly, is like Cinnamon and Chocolate Chip, and the artist formerly known as Knox or Jordan Cherry. You know, that is learning about racism in the industry and how performers of color and trans performers you know, just are at risk in ways that cis white performers simply are not. And, you know, figuring out how to address that every moment of every day and move through the world knowing that like in my bones, not like trying to remind myself of that, but like those are really formative experiences, I think. Between Cinnamon and then Princess Pandora, who is Little Shoes on IG, that's where a lot of my education came from. Just
That's
you know,
so awesome.
on the job training.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's just when we were both in this like queer porn scene here, I feel like there was so much more of a community.
Yeah.
Where now I feel like content trade in one way has made it easier where you can just work with one performer and shoot a whole movie in a weekend or something like that. Whereas before, I feel like you really had to be part of the community as opposed to just like kind of being like, okay, I'm gonna have a shoot this weekend. I'm gonna get together with 3 performers. It just feels a lot different now than what it was. Even when it was after Lusty Lady closed, I feel like Kink Live almost became that next thing where all the new performers were going there. And it was the same thing where it's like we all hung out together afterwards. You all shared the same dressing room. It had a lot of that same camaraderie and community thing. And I feel like that's a little bit gone now because I feel like so many people moved out of the Bay because people are getting straight priced out.
Just straight up. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's powerful to be able to leave work as a sex worker, to be on the job in a place where you have community and mentorship. The fact that you could like ask somebody like, oh my God, I started my period and I have to shoot this DP scene. What do I do? And someone could be like, oh, I got you, and help you out. Like that's huge. And that's not happening for OnlyFans babies working on their own, out in, West Virginia somewhere. Like that's, and then to be able to have that like community and mentorship, be done with work and like walk across the street to like the safe space bar that's like also filled with your coworkers and people from your community, and then take the bus home. Like,
yeah, there's very few cities that really have like sex work almost spill into the identity, and SF's definitely one of them. I feel like you get a little bit of that in Vegas. You get a little bit of that in LA, and then the only place internationally I really felt it was Amsterdam, which is the same vibe, where it's like there's sex workers all around you, and it's just like, oh yeah, we're all doing this. It's just part of life here.
That is something I really want to do. I went to Amsterdam a couple years ago. I can't remember. I've been there a couple times, but I went recently in the past few years, and I went and saw a live sex show. And I want to do that. that's the most fun. Like live sex shows are the intersection between my like performance, like musical theater baby, and like the porn star in me. And we did a little bit of the, like we had the Come and Glitter vibe back in the day.
I've definitely seen those. Your scene was very intense. I feel like that's something I really loved about you, because it feels like all of your performances are so authentically coming from a real place that like you are like, I want to do this. This is either humiliating or like pushes me or whatever, like whether it's like piggy stuff, which was the same with me, where I'm like, this is really humiliating. I find it really hot, but like before seeing you do it or like a few other femmes, there was just no one doing that stuff.
Nobody. And now like everybody's a fucking pig. I'm just like,
yeah, everyone's doing pig stuff, everyone's doing cow stuff. It's just part of life.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah, I just always love that about you, because you've always done things that aren't, just like down the center for like what they want porn stars to, or like doing like stuff with diapers or just like all that sort of stuff, where it's like, like, I love it all. Yeah, I definitely,
shame fucks up so much stuff, and like as long as you're a consenting adult and you're doing things that make other people and yourself happy, like be proud. Our ancestors suffered too much for us not to be proud of our weird lives.
For real. Yeah, I feel like you've been a really big influence on me, and I think a lot of other queer femme performers, because it's really showing you can do all these different things and still be a queer femme performer, and you can do intense fetish stuff, you can do mainstream stuff, and then like you also like toured around the country with Stormy Daniels helping her out, and you can be political. Like, I feel like what a porn performer can do, I feel like you definitely expand it for queer femmes, because I didn't feel going into porn, I was like, okay, hopefully I'm gonna get a few shoots for Crash Pad or Trouble Films, or like, just kind of the basic stuff. But I feel like you really expanded what you can do both on and off set, where you can have a podcast, you can try to start a musical and then do that for a little bit. Like, I feel like you've really kind of done everything. I feel like that's so cool, because in porn, you're almost put in this box where it's like, okay, you're a performer, you just perform. You don't direct, you don't do anything else. And that's what I think so cool about what you do.
Likewise, my friend, likewise. And yeah, it's like as a sex worker, like sort of no matter what genre you choose, you are like the CEO, the treasurer, the product, the the costumer, the set director. Like you take on all of these roles. And so like to tell anybody who enters this industry that, oh, you're just this now is just, it's flat out wrong, because no matter what genre of the sex trade you're working in, unless you're being trafficked, which like, let's not do that unless
let's not do that.
Yeah, exactly. But if you only have one job, like you might be being trafficked, because like this is a multifaceted job, and I want I want everybody to be their own boss. Fuck a boss. The sex industry has been my pathway towards like freedom and entrepreneurship and bodily autonomy in real time, because bodily autonomy is like great to talk about and like policy and stuff, but anybody who belongs to a corporation and pays your health insurance and has your 401k, it's like, do you really have bodily autonomy? Can you really just not pick up that phone right now? Can you really, you know, make sure your child wakes up from that nap, or do you have to be in that meeting? And so sex work has been my path to that, but it doesn't have to be just sex work anymore. And I want that for freaking everybody, because fuck a boss.
That's what makes me so hopeful about the industry now, because it's just like where AVN was 5 years ago when I first started going and where it is now. Everyone before was trying to hustle deals and try and get shoots and all that stuff. Now everyone's just shooting content trade the entire weekend essentially, and might not even go to the convention once. Like, it just gives me so much hope, because it's now the performers who really control their own money, their destiny, like all of that stuff. If you want to shoot 50 scenes in a year, you can do that on your own essentially now.
Easy.
If you can find people who want to collaborate with you, you can really just do whatever you want. I think that's the coolest thing. I think you're getting more creativity out of performers. You're getting so much more than just what it was maybe 10 years ago.
I agree. It's yeah, Marks would love queer porn right now. Definitely, Marks would definitely be on that queer porn train. Body, so hot.
I'm like, that's one of the few things that's giving me optimism for the future. Is I'm like, it's just going to be more and more of this, hopefully.
Absolutely, yes. And the exploitative parties that have had power are just like, they're becoming less and less powerful like every freaking day, and it's just magical. I love it.
It's really amazing. Just realizing that. I think the pandemic is definitely do more of it, because I feel like these studios are just going to come back weaker, and it just is what it is.
The studios that are succeeding are going to succeed are the ones that have like put their faith into these independent creators and been like, hey y'all, we need you so bad, and like, you know, really behaving as if the power structures are what they are. And
I also feel like at some point these like really mainstream performers, like Angela White or Riley Reid, are gonna realize that they can make a lot more money off their own content, owning all their own stuff. And I feel like eventually, once that changes with like the really extreme mainstream performers, I think it's going to shift so much.
Is on that tip, you know, like,
oh really?
Like as far as I know, but we're seeing performers such as Adriana, you know, just like, cool, I'm going to produce the exact Barbie princess pinup shoot that I want in my bedroom, invite my best friend over, and like, that's our money. Bye.
And that's I think that's how it should be. I want to see like these performers, like I want to see them at 100% themselves. I want to see what they actually want to do, because I'm sure it's going to be really, really cool and a lot of really creative stuff.
Oh yeah, incredible stuff. I love seeing everybody get to be their creative, weird, kinky selves out here. It's fucking fabulous. I've been shooting a lot of pegging content with my partner Michael, and like seeing the sort of mainstream, especially male performers. I definitely have all these male performers who have been, you know, only boy girl straight content. It's just like it was in high school, right? They all come up to me and they're like, I'm like, sir, you need to step back. But just another example of like how, you know, the world is opening. The world is opening.
It definitely is. Yeah. How long has it been since you've been fully on like a normal set? Has it been like over a year?
Well, it's hard to say, because I mean, when I say like a normal set, one that's like not mine, because you know, I've had I actually had the opportunity to produce some gay porn recently, which was
so cool.
Fun. It was definitely like a daddy boy scene, so I was very there for it.
Yeah, that's definitely your vibe.
Definitely my vibe.
Yeah, 100%.
So, but even so, like that was for a company I had never worked for before. But again, it was at my house on my set, you know, like at the end of the day, I turned to my partner and I was like, I love this role, like creating the space, you know, as a not performer, but a producer, assistant director. I'm like, this is just like a GSA meeting, but with sex at the end. You know, like I've been doing this my whole life. But getting to produce for other companies and create space for performers, specifically when they're queer. I did a transfixed set recently.
Oh,
I was
fun.
like, great, everybody. Like at the end of the day, I was like, hey, everybody, we had a 23-year-old trans girl on set today, and she got to have sex exactly how she wanted to. And she went home safe. We all
So
did
great.
our job.
Because like yeah.
Yeah.
That's like so
that's
important.
Yeah,
literally my last interview I did was with Ryder Monroe, and we literally talked about how so many of these sets, like these like male dominated sets where it gets so broy, and it's like putting trans women in really uncomfortable situations, and just like talking about like feeling anxiety on set or like having a panic attack because some dude said some fucked up shit. Like it's just so important, I think, to have. I mean, I'm a dyke, so I guess I'm like only have women on set, but I just feel like it's just like a more comfortable atmosphere. And I think as like a director, I just want people to feel comfortable, because when people are comfortable, they're gonna have better sex, and then you're gonna have a better performance. And like, I just feel like that's kind of always my end goal. What's your favorite place or city to shoot in? Because you've obviously have a lot of SF roots, but you've obviously shot probably in Vegas, LA, Cape Cod.
Cape Cod. Honestly, I'm gonna throw a curveball here. I'm gonna say the farm in upstate New York for insects. I don't know
that's so cool.
I think like Petey and Hazel have a child now, and it's like a farm for, you know, pastoral raising of families and such. But when I went there, it was, and you can watch. I did, I think, 2 like 5-day excursions out to the farm, and it's like north of Woodstock. Like you fly to New York, and this is definitely not my favorite place to travel to because it's so like grueling to get there and back. But once you're there, it's just like, I called it like BDSM camp, because I'm not there with any other performers. It was just me in this creepy farmhouse in upstate New York, and then like going to set every day in a creepy barn full of all this creepy like vintage bondage equipment. You know, like I'm looking at my cuffs, right? And they're leather cuffs, and I'm just like, oh, these are like issued from a vintage mental institution. Cool.
Wow, it's so cool though.
So cool though, like for somebody like, but when do you get that opportunity? And then also like Petey, you know, is a top I love to work with, because he's like a freaky bottom at heart as well. He's just like, I want to be in all the things, but also I want to make sure that they work all right, and you know, like so. And obviously that's not what sells. But God bless a 75-year-old man in bondage, though. I'm sure we love it. We love it.
There's like a lot of BDSM makers in like that part of like New England, like upstate New York, Massachusetts, like with Bella Vendetta. Wasteland is up in New Hampshire. I think Shush is up there as well. There's a lot. So
there's definitely like, you know, the very serious, like high protocol, old guard leather folks love a pastoral New England remote farmhouse.
Yeah, I got I did like a water bondage scene with Bella Vendetta in like a creek there before, and it was just like something I never assumed that I was going to shoot BDSM in the middle of like New England, but it happened, and I really loved the experience there, because it is so, you're so out of like your usual thing. I feel like sometimes with shoots, when you can get so out of your like usual 5 cities you're in, you can just really focus on the work. But at the same time, like we've had experiences where we've like been in like the middle of Cape Cod, and then like a very disorganized shoot, and then I've actually told this story. It was actually for a Carol Queen thing at the Center of Sex and Culture, and it was like, tell us about a weird porn experience. And basically, myself, Aspen Brooks. I almost combined her names and said Amber. It's not Amber. We all went to Olive Garden, and then we all went back to the hotel because all of our shoots got canceled. So the entire like cast in the movie, we just had an orgy at a Holiday
so
Inn
fun.
in Cape Cod. It was just like one of the funniest experiences. And like Aspen's like, I've never kissed a girl before, and we're like, oh shit, we need to turn you gay.
We didn't quite succeed. She's still pretty straight, but
She's still
we tried.
But now she shoots with girls though.
She does. She was like she had not shot girl at that point.
Yeah, we're the first two girls she kissed. We did that.
We did that. That's our baby.
Yeah, I love that so much. I'm just like, yeah, my roommates were watching something before AVN this year, because we did like a watch party here with my roommates and their partners and stuff. And before, they were like watching a thing, and Aspen was like doing an interview. I'm like, oh, I was that girl's first gay kiss.
I made her gay.
Yeah, I was so proud of that. So
good.
I'm gonna ask 2 more questions. I don't want to take up your whole day, but because I feel like we could literally go for this for like 5 hours.
Yep.
About very important stuff. I feel like I've only had to ask like 2 questions. It's like everything else is completely organic. I love it. So what are some things that you want to do in your career that you haven't so far? Because you've been in this industry for about a decade now, right? Something like that, a little bit longer.
Yep. So I think I'm going to be able to do this year. If not this year, definitely next year. I want to start producing my own gangbangs.
That's so cool.
And also for other people. Like, I got into the industry for the elaborate BDSM and elaborate, just the idea that you would like throw a massive sex party, essentially, like for one, or for 1 or 2 or 10 or however many you're having. I love that. And specifically a gangbang and orgies and stuff, when you're coordinating testing and a place, it's like, that's not something I want to experience organically. I want that to be very meticulously planned, at least one Virgo on the committee, that's getting everything together. Gangbang, my first gangbang is how I met my partner, Michael. I would say the old Armory is probably like one of my favorite places to shoot, but it doesn't exist anymore. But that's where my first gangbang was. And it was when Matrice Madeline was directing for the site, and it was like trying to rebrand as fantasy gangbangs. And so there was a pretty extensive interview leading up to the process, and they wanted to craft the shoot around the model's particular gangbang fantasy. Mine was a baseball team. I got railed by a whole baseball team.
That's like so on brand.
Right. So I did
that.
A couple more gangbangs. One was for a gay porn site. I was the only cis female that's ever been on their site.
That's let's give a shout out to Treasure Island. They're the only SF-based gay porn company left.
Oh my God, and I love them. I love
you shot such a cool scene for them.
Thank you. Yeah, and Michael was also in that.
And it was so actually gay too.
So gay. Yeah. No, so there were at least like 2 guys in there that were like not that excited about fucking me, but they were doing it anyway. Even though I'm a girl. Sorry. I mean, what's wrong?
Yeah. That was a really cool project they did though. It was you, they had a trans woman for one of the scenes, I think.
She's very hot though. But yes, it was like, I want to say it was like a boy girl with her, and then I think there was one other like unique. Maybe it was just like a regular boy scene to just like throw it in there. But it was this, it was called Fuckholes 3 was I think the movie, and it was like all about expanding. But very fun.
So
but
cool.
I want to do that. I want to. Gangbangs are hard to coordinate, but I definitely still want to do a gangbang with like all my homies for real, like Robbie Echo, Mickey Maud, Michael Vegas, like all just, boys. And I would love to do an all gender gangbang. That's on the list as well. Got to get Eva Paradis in there. But that would be really fun to have some femtops and mask chops kind of. But yeah, I would like to start producing gangbangs for myself and for others because they're hard to coordinate and the people deserve.
They definitely are. I feel like I definitely relate to what you're saying about like BDSM stuff, especially like elaborate stuff. I've just kind of stopped trying in my like everyday life, because I feel like it's so hard to find the people who are professional enough to do it.
Yeah.
And then in porn, you can have it and then not only be able to live it out, you also have like evidence of it and video of it, so you can actually sell it and like do something with it.
Totally.
And I'm like, if I'm like, one of my major fears is electricity. So I did electricity scene like I think it was like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And I was like crying like profusely in the scene. I'm like, I want that on camera. I don't want that to be like just lost to time. I want that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one thing that is very much about like Michael's sexuality is, you know, when we first started talking, he had just hours and hours of our archival footage of his butthole. I was like, babe, you're just sitting on money. Like this can't be the way. Like Peg Him was really not like popping at that point. And, but I mean, he like didn't care. He was just like, yeah, I have all this great footage of my butthole. Cause like, obviously I can't see what's going on when it's happening. I don't have that angle. So I have to go look at it again, you know? And like, I've realized, I mean, obviously I've been in this industry for over 10 years, but yeah, whenever I shoot something that's really hot, I can't wait to go back and see it from the camera angle as opposed to my eyeball angle, obviously.
Yeah.
And then you get to live it again and again.
And it's like, I feel like you get such a different vibe of the scene too. I shot an orgy in Amsterdam, I think it was like 2 years ago. And then I was editing it just like last month. And I totally forgot about most of the scene until like watching it back and being like, oh yeah, that happened. I have no memory of that, but okay, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one of the fun things about performing is that you just get into this zone. And for somebody with a brain like mine, like ADD Gemini brain, it's hard to find activities that actually take my full attention. And performing and producing and directing porn does. So we keep doing it.
I think that's how you know you're doing the right thing. If it's the thing that you like wake up thinking about, and you're like always thinking about on some level.
Yep. And you can go a whole day doing it and then be like, wait, what happened? It's nighttime?
Yeah. I feel like the whole thing of like not being on normal sets anymore, it's like the biggest thing that's been hard for me in the pandemic, because I feel like for me, it's just like, just being able to be creative with like other queer people and just like making something you're really stoked about.
Yeah.
So that's definitely what
You have to come down. You have to come now that we're vaccinated, life is real. Come here.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you fully vaccinated and everything?
Fully
basically.
Vaccinated.
Same here. Yeah. Come up here anytime.
I will.
Yeah.
I would love to shoot with you again.
Likewise, completely. We only did like one really weird mainstream shoot together, even though we're totally in the same queer porn world.
Yeah.
Which is the weirdest thing. Definitely.
We should definitely make a movie together. I don't know why that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Come up here. We actually have very affordable dungeon space here now. So
I mean, wow, that's huge. That's actually really huge.
I've been working with Courtney, and I started a BDSM collective called These Babe Rats, and basically we figure out a way how to shoot all this stuff ourselves. Everyone edits it all together, so it's a complete collective. And I think we only end up paying maybe like $100 for production each for a whole movie. So that was what we were doing right before the pandemic. The last scene we actually shot was like a 4-on-1 scene where I was getting fucked by strap-ons, but blindfolded. It was amazing.
Oh wow, that is squiggly.
Yeah.
I love it.
I know. I'm like, I love that we shoot like almost the same stuff where we're like, like 5-on-1, 4-on-1, whatever, something like that. Yeah.
Like I need it to pop the little brain gremlins as well. I need at least 5, you know. No, I think we would have such a good time collaborating.
Definitely.
Magical. Cool.
So I have one more question, also magical related. Ooh. If you could change one thing in porn overnight, tomorrow it's completely different, what would it be?
Oh, all of our testing is paid for.
That's a really good one. So like all free talent testing.
Yeah, just talent testing. We don't give TTS our money anymore. And
for real.
Even if that was like something, okay, so like less magical brain, but if it was like more realistic in this lifetime, probably something that will happen, that we'll see. At the very least, if that money that we paid to TTS like was funneled back into our community somehow, if it was like going to something that also like that we benefited from in some way, like the profits were not just going to this like weird corporation that's probably selling our information, that would be awesome.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. And I mean, that also would be solved by like universal basic health care. So that would be cool.
It definitely would be. I feel like people who aren't in this industry don't realize that our testing is like $150 a month or twice a month, depending on where you're shooting. If you're going through
if you've been
testing.
shooting through COVID, you've been shooting like a $35 or $75 COVID test like every couple of days.
Wow.
And some
I didn't realize
it
was like that.
But yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah, I feel like companies covering your testing costs is definitely rare. It's usually the exception to the rule. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest prohibitive things about being in porn is if you're shooting with companies that require talent testing, there's a part of your paycheck that's like essentially being thrown away just to get to set.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a thing that people need to know more about porn, and it's really shitty and can really be expensive and just kind of inconvenient.
And the way that the barrier of entry is so low now that you could just like set up a porn account and start shooting with your neighbors, anywhere in the world, basically. We need the type of like testing infrastructure that allows for people to be like, cool, I'm in porn now. Great. This is the type of test I should go get. Awesome. Where's my clinic? Great. That's about 5 miles from my house. I'll make an appointment and go there tomorrow. Like it should be as easy as what I just did to like make a fucking Brazilian appointment. You know what I mean? Like, why is it easier for me to get my pussy waxed than it is for me to like get STI tested?
I really wish there was more free clinics like St. James that was included in talent testing, because like I go there for all my testing for the most part. I just have like basically a gig in LA County. That's like the only time I ever do talent testing, I feel like. But like it's just like this whole thing that's so much easier that you can just go in, and everyone at St. James is either like a sex worker, a partner of a sex worker. So there's no stigma there. But I don't understand why the industry hasn't brought in partners like that, or even like Planned Parenthood or something that they could actually be like, okay, we can work out a real testing thing. Because talent testing's only in like 5 cities, I think. There's one in Oakland, which is in a really rough part of Oakland. It's on International.
Oh, really?
East Oakland.
That one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty rough area. I used to live near it, so I'm like definitely knew that vibe.
Totally.
And then I don't even think there's one in SF anymore. I know there's like maybe 1 or 2 in LA. There's one in Miami. And like other than that, there's really not
like
any.
Budapest or like something.
Yeah, there's one in Europe for all of Europe, which feels very ridiculous.
Something's really got to shift if I could. And I mean, I'm not just hoping that we get, Barbara Eden showing up and Jeannie granting us that wish, like the reason I came down to Los Angeles was to work for the Free Speech Coalition, which manages the performer availability screening service, which is the infrastructure that was built to allow people to shoot without having to give up their medical information. Because as of right now, when you're not using Pass, you're just showing somebody your test, which is like not ideal, especially since we test for HIV. Someone's HIV status is nobody's business, least of all their employers. I'm just going to say that.
Definitely.
All their employers. So instead, the tests get reported to Pass, and Pass just reveals a green check or a red X. Now, I would have a red X right now, even though I'm tested, because talent testing's not a part of Pass anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So fixing that is a top priority, but because it is really important that, our medical information isn't just fucking floating around there, specifically HIV statuses.
Yeah. Also, I know in Vegas, there's been like people faking tests and stuff, and I feel like there needs to be one standardized thing across the industry that's not so cost prohibitive, where you know, there's performers who aren't going to do that for a content trade shoot, because why would you spend $200 to get tested to shoot content trade when it's going to be probably more than the hotel room that you guys are splitting to shoot with, probably more than like the videography fees that you're paying. Like, it just feels very backwards. But I think that's a very, very good answer, and definitely not something anyone said before, but like, it's 100% needed. Well, thank you so much, Siouxsie. You are so amazing, and I hope we get to work together in the future or chat together again on a future podcast. But thanks so much.
My pleasure. And thank you for doing this. It's so important to the industry, and you are just a joy. And I love the porn that you make, and I hope you make it forever and ever. We're going to be 75-year-olds in bondage.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.